Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the ReQuest. I am Captain Logan, and joining me as always is my wonderful co-host, Austin the Day Ghost. Today, we're going to tackle Seven Samurai, a movie that I am massively remiss in having never watched. This was requested by Tyler Overall, my good friend and artist on Spawnville. Thanks a lot to you for joining the request tier on Patreon and making us watch this 3.5 hour behemoth that was absolutely worth the time that we put into it. I don't mind right away doing this so that we can just get right into it. Austin, would you kindly tell us a little bit?
Green.
Look, he brought up his green screen. Austin, would you mind giving us a little bit of a rundown on the happenings in 1954's same year that Godzilla came out, which is nuts, by the way, Kurosawa's Seven Samurai?
Well, and this was also put out by Toho. It had like a little Toho logo at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
But Seven Samurai is a movie about seven samurais that come to protect a village. You've probably seen this in like 8 billion things that it's inspired.
And American remakes and...
Yeah, exactly. You got like A Bug's Life, Magnificent Seven, Seven Psychopaths 7, and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Just all these movies that it inspired. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and Zack Snyder's Justice League, which made the fascinating change from 7 to 6.
Oh, well, the whole seven thing is weird because they put it out like, oh, the seven thing,
Yeah.
but apparently it was always supposed to be like Unite the Seven Seas because it was only for Aquaman. But like
Oh,
they never
really?
came out and said it at the time, so people just went like, oh, Unite the Seven Justice League members.
I didn't know that, but I promise you, we won't spend this entire time talking about Zack Snyder and BVS and Justice League. But are you aware that he actually, in promotion for that movie or interviews somewhere, name dropped this movie
Oh, I did.
regarding Justice League? Yeah. Where he's like, we're gonna Seven Samurai it together, and I just think it's fascinating that the initial, which casts Batman as the wise sage, which does not work with BVS, by the way.
I can't believe we used it as a verb. We're gonna Seven Samurai this.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, Zach.
But so I think it's really interesting that the Unite the Seven tagline was there before we even really had any footage of that movie. And once I read that, I couldn't help but think that there was an obvious correlation there, that he had to be thinking more of kind of, homaging or adapting this movie when he's making Justice League. Because the more I think about it, the more parallels they kind of have. So, which is like not surprising because in certain ways, like any get the band together in the first place, team building movie is going to be looking back at this. This is one of those kind of seminal, foundational films that I. Not all the tropes here are the first time we've ever had those tropes, but it's the first thing that brings a lot of...
We united all seven tropes.
That's about right. Things like the soldier who gets in bed with a girl in a village that he's trying to save had been in movies before, but it mixed with so many other things. Like with this movie is the first time that like all these things are blended together, and then we keep doing that over and over again, and it becomes kind of a formula.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so, like, if you've never seen this movie before, you will recognize this formula, but sort of like, Superman with superhero things, or even Spider-Man with superhero things, it will feel recognizable, but it will be the first time we've really done that formula.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the big thing is the kind of like group of people that go to like the warriors, depending on what it is, in order to help protect their like village or whatever it is. That's like the big thing that has inspired like 8 billion other projects. I think even just Star Wars alone has done this premise like 16 times in different shows.
Yeah, of course. Well, and this, of course, was a big touchstone for the original Star Wars.
Mhm.
Even though it's not exactly the same formula, where it's not the same kind of ensemble cast where it's a bunch of warriors all being brought together, but especially just with visual stuff. SF Debris has a whole video about all the things that Star Wars cribs from the Seven Samurai, and I watched that years before I saw this movie, and now I'm glad that I finally seen it because I know what he's talking about now.
Yeah, no, this for me was always one of those movies where it's like, oh, you got to watch Seven Samurai, but I just never got to it, unfortunately. So I'm glad that somebody paid us to watch it. So I finally got to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that I never would have gotten to it if that hadn't happened, but I kind of just kept forgetting about it. And I mean, Seven Samurai, now that I've seen it, is like. I mean, I could name a bunch of different things for different genres, but it's like The Wizard of Oz. It's like the original Scarface, where it's, like I said, foundational for those kind of archetypes of story models, but it also holds up really well going back to it today. Like this doesn't just like lay the bricks for a bunch of other movies that will take this concept and run with it. It's still arguably the best of those, or at least it's on par with the best of them. Like, if it's ever been done as well, it's never been done better, at least of the things that I've seen. Like, I've seen Magnificent Seven. It's one of my wife's favorite movies. It's been a long time, and I've only seen it once. I think this will stick with me better than that did, because the whole time I was watching this movie, I was like, I know I've seen that, but nothing's coming to me about it.
Oh,
And
okay, and I've never seen
I
that.
found myself
Or
latching on to characters more with this, particularly the kind of Zordon of the group, the wise sage guy. Boy, I thought his performance was just spectacular.
oh,
The way
it's
that
great.
every time he's like not sure what to do next, or kind of bemused or something, he'll like rub his head. Like he's got a lot of really great consistent acting choices.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I should probably also mention a few people in the chat have said that Star Wars is more a hidden fortress. I'll just throw that out there. But
and
no,
and that's and that's
that
a movie I
actor
don't know anything about
especially.
either, but it's got to be both, right? Like,
Well,
does
and they're
that
both Kurosawa.
well does and I should say I've never seen another Kurosawa movie. I want to now. Somebody in the comments earlier said that I should look at his Shakespeare stuff. I didn't know he did any
Oh, that's
Shakespeare stuff.
fascinating. I didn't know that either.
Yeah, so I want to look into that now. But
Yeah, I want to see what he did. That's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, like did he like what plays did he adapt? I wonder.
If
Like, did he do a
if he
Hamlet
did
or did he
Macbeth,
do a
I'm watching that next
yeah?
after I hang up.
Um, did other Kurosawa movies do the like white transitions that Star Wars obviously cribbed?
I wouldn't be shocked if that's just like his style is that kind of swipe, and like it kind of pops up from movie to movie.
We're jumping all over the place, but it's really effective here because there's so many characters that you're following, and a lot of obviously related subplots. Like we're kind of you've frozen on my screen here. Oh, there you
Oh,
are.
I was just very still.
um, all of all of the little subplots in this movie are all directly connected, and we're not like constantly jumping to a story for a while and jumping back, but there is a lot of see what this character's doing, see what this character's doing, and those white transitions give you a real good sense of like time passing, or at least like now you're with a different character, because it's kind of easy to like lose yourself a little bit with a cast this big. And I mean, that's part of the reason that it's got to be as long as it is. Let's talk for a minute about the length and the pacing of this movie, because I would argue that, and I had to break this up in multiple sittings, because just with my life the way it is right now, I don't have 3.5 hours that I can sit down and just devote to watching movies. So I had to see this over a couple of days, and so my experience wasn't purely authentic. Like movies are meant to be seen initially, at least most of them, not as many now, in a movie theater without pausing, without getting up or anything. And if you get up, too bad for you. You're gonna miss stuff while you're getting your
You
popcorn.
get your one pause in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. It was nice. Why couldn't Snyder have given us that with Justice League? By the way, I mean, a 4-hour movie. It really should have. I mean, I always said that should have been broken up into episodes, like it almost was. But at the very least, it should have had an intermission.
Absolutely.
And it should have had that Offspring intermission too. There's an Offspring album that has this great intermission with this announcer voice that goes intermission, and it's like do da 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 da, and then every now and again he just comes back and goes intermission. Like I wanted that for Justice League.
I mean, I would be fine if it was just like 5 minutes of Pretty Fly for a White Guy on loop for Justice League is the intermission.
I didn't get up during the intermission because, or fast forward it, I should say, because it would be kind of weird when you're watching at home if you're like, you look at your watch, I got 5 minutes, and then you let it play. You could just pause it, but the score overall through this movie is really great and really varied, and apparently this composer did a lot of Kurosawa movies and died at the age of 41 while in the middle of his next movie, and so didn't get to finish what the score of whatever that was. I don't remember now. So that's really sad, but his work in this is brilliant, particularly some of the guitar stuff I really appreciated. But anyway, I really liked the intermission music and found myself kind of being whisked away by it while I was waiting for the movie to come back.
Oh, definitely. I found with the time, like watching it, I'd be like,
Thanks for getting us back on track. Yeah.
It's like, there's like 2 hours left. Like, I don't know how this can be another 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then I keep watching, and it's like, oh, okay, no, like I kind of get it, but there's an hour left. I don't know how there's an hour left for this.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I get it.
Real command of time and pacing. Like, this has that time vortex thing where you just wonder where all the minutes go, because like I didn't find any part of this boring. Again, I think some of the score choices help a lot. This is one of those pieces, and I think we did this more. I say we, I mean this is even, not even an American film, but I think movies of this era did this kind of thing, be it here or in Japan, more often than we do now, where you'll have a lot of music, but it will mostly be to score the quote-unquote boring parts, where like the action doesn't need a bunch of like really rousing music, because it's already exciting enough. But also I think with this in particular, the idea because the music almost always lays out during fight sequences, and unless you have like a big dramatic moment of somebody just looking at a horrific fire or something, and then sometimes you'll have like a sting or music like subtly comes back in, but for the most part, when you have big exciting action sequences, it feels like it's supposed to be really visceral and like it's really happening, and you're actually there, and you're supposed to be caught up in the carnage, and it doesn't feel produced anymore. And it seems like the only places where it feels a little bit produced with score is to try to keep things moving during intentionally paced sections. And so I think part of the reason that you never get bored with this movie, or at least I didn't, is because I think Kurosawa is really aware of how long this movie is and how easy it might be for somebody to get bored. I feel like he's constantly really, really careful with like every second of this piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Because I also found that there wasn't really a lot of moments that were boring, and I was thinking a lot while watching it about Two Towers, the second Lord of the Rings movie.
Yeah, of course.
Because a big part of the like Aragorn and co.
Well, Fellowship of the Ring is the story again, right? Like...
Oh, of course. But I was thinking specifically with that because a big part of that movie is just waiting for the battle. You know what I mean? Where it's like everybody's kind of getting ready, and like like it's coming. It's going to be really bad. We gotta, we gotta be really prepared for that. And this movie, like, it's even more of it because it's a lot longer, and that's the entire plot. There's no like secondary group.
Well,
but I also found it more. But I also found it more interesting here because I think some of the parts in Two Towers, I think I'm kind of like, okay, I get it. Like, it's going to be really bad. but here I didn't really have that, and it helps that like the entire cast is great, and there's so many characters, but like it's everybody's so distinct at the same time.
Well, nobody attacked me with spears for saying this, but Lord of the Rings is not an inherently character-driven piece, and this absolutely is. This is a lot more.
I missed.
This is a lot more about the humanity of it, or the lack thereof in certain cases, and it, like, every character is really sympathetic, and I understand like where they came from and how they've gotten to the place they are now and all of that. And so I think that's maybe part of the reason that you found that more effective.
Hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. It is a lot more about the actual characters and kind of what's going on about that. Well, I think with that movie, it maybe gets a little bit lost and just like, oh, we're doomed.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like there's nothing like inherently human about Frodo's quest and all of that.
Oh,
There's a
and
lot
I
of
love
stuff
Lord
in.
of the Rings. I'm not trashing
Yeah,
them.
there's a lot of stuff in Lord of the Rings, like about obsession and addiction and all of that. But it is also, at the end of the day, still a good versus evil story, because it's a sword and sorcery fantasy thing, and this is much more about the shades of gray. Like
Mhm.
you never
Yeah,
really
exactly.
question what side most of the good guys are on in Lord of the Rings. Like there's some, and I've always been really trepidatious of talking too much about those stories in that franchise,
Until we
because
do the commentaries.
yeah, he's always wanted to do commentaries on those movies. I'm still on the fence about even jumping into that whole thing, because I'm real casual with that, and like I've seen those, but it's not my favorite thing. I don't know them super well, and it's fantasy's not where I live. But so I mean, you've got some side flipping and stuff, I realize, with Lord of the Rings, but like there's never a question of like what side is Gandalf on, and like even with the kind of Gandalf of this piece, yeah, he is always noble and sage-like, and has all these like nuggets of wisdom, but we don't really know what his past is, and he is still a Ronin. And there's every possibility, like, we don't get into this, and I've only seen this once, so there might be things I'm missing, of course, but we don't really get into like what kinds of things he might have done in his past, and there's a lot of ambiguity about whether, by and large, samurais are really in this period of history, whether we should consider them heroes or not. There's a lot of talk in this about how sometimes you can't really tell the samurais from the bandits, except for just like skill sets and things. That, like, there are samurais causing as much problems as the bandits, and there's a reason that when the samurais finally come together and go into the town in the second act, that the townspeople are afraid of them and hide and don't trust them yet, because they could be just as bad as the bandits. And there's a lot of people that don't think this was a good idea in the first place, and maybe for good reason. But of course, they ain't saints either, and the farmers also have made some mistakes. And there's a lot of talk about like hoarding things but pretending like they're poorer than they actually are, and the ways in which they've taken advantage of people in the past and all of that. And so there's kind of a question in this period of history where we're in the middle of civil war and stuff, about just how much of people's humanity they've managed to hang on to. And kind of at the end of the day, the big thematic crux of this movie is clearly a teamwork thing, and we roll our eyes at that now because we can't stop making movies where in a very superficial way, the moral of the story at the end of the day is work is a team, guys. But I think it plays in a real profound way even today, the teamwork message of this movie in particular, that you can't just go it alone and be selfish and go into a battle by yourself. Like you need everybody working together, or you might die, and somebody might die anyway. but it's better than just going it alone. And there's a lot of really good battle strategy stuff here that converts to real life lessons. I feel like Kurosawa is looking really closely at Sun Tzu with this movie. Um, I like all those little nuggets, those little lessons.
Yeah, no, I wasn't prepared for because when we started to get to the battle stuff, I was like, okay, we got like an hour left. Like,
Yeah,
is this just going to be an hour of fighting? And then
it's not.
it's not, no, and it's they like really break it up, and it's like, and it's a lot more like how this would actually play out, where it's like, okay, here they send in like this group of people, and then the next wave, and so forth, and it's like they have to have different strategies for each wave. They can't just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and they can't just win because they're stronger.
Yeah, and they don't get through it without casualties. And obviously, we're spoiling this movie, but we lose one of our seven Ronin before the bandits even attack.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I was not. I think a lot of it is because the different like Seven Samurai stuff that I've seen that kind of takes this and like redoes it. They don't have any casualties of like the team that they bring in. So I wasn't even thinking like, oh, these characters could die. It was like, oh, okay, we're gonna kind of go in our like seven samurais. We're gonna save the day. So when people started dying, it was like, oh
I was
man.
shocked by it. This movie is, of course, 60 plus years old, and I found myself constantly surprised by the visceral nature of it.
Hmm.
Like in the moment, particular, just like the level of violence and the level of realism with this movie, and of course never gratuitous, and it's never cheesy either. But also story choices.
Yeah, there was a point towards the end where, because they kind of established that one of the bandits is kind of like hiding with like the women of the village, and they have a gun. And I was kind
Yeah.
of waiting, like, okay, like I'm waiting for like the shoe to drop, and yet when it did, it was like, oh man, like it was crazy. Like like really got me, even though I was waiting for that moment to happen.
It's
And
because there's such a documentary quality to this movie, and
mm,
this sounds like I'm overselling it when I say this, but I don't think I am. This is one of those movies where you occasionally have to check yourself and remind yourself you're watching a movie because it feels really real. I mean, like I said, I think visceral is the word of the day with this piece.
well, especially the way it's shot, for like the battles towards the end, where you have kind of three main camera angles. Like it's almost like they had set up cameras and just filmed this battle. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Well, and everything about this is ahead of its time because
Hmm.
Kurosawa insisted on building sets outside of a studio. The Toho wanted him to use like backlots and stuff, and he said no. He insisted on going to an island and building everything from scratch and trying to make everything as close to what it would actually look like in the 1500s as as he could, and so there's a lot of authenticity there. And then it's a three camera setup, like you alluded to, because you said three camera angles. He used three cameras in an age where you usually would use one with action, and then apparently kept doing that with a lot of his movies.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah. And it's funny. I just kind of went in my head like, it was what, probably like three. I'm surprised I nailed it just like that.
Yeah, apparently he would
Yeah.
have like a main camera to capture the bulk of the action, so kind of a wide shot, and then and then he would
Then kind of
have
two close-ups.
another like a side camera, like I think like kind of a close up thing. I'm not sure exactly what that second camera was doing, and then a gorilla camera
Oh, okay.
that would be probably handheld and was I mean, I haven't read real deep into this, but just having seen the film and knowing that there's that third camera, pretty sure it must have been handheld, if not on a dolly sometimes. So, like, I'm assuming that's the camera that in this is the most memorable shot for me in some of the last battle where we follow. This felt so insanely ahead of its time. Where you know what I'm going to say, right? Where we're following two guys. I forget which samurai it is. But you've got a samurai fighting a bandit, and they go into a house,
Oh,
and
yep.
the camera follows through the windows all the way into the other side of the house and comes out the other side, and it's a oneer. It never cuts. And that whole thing was spectacular. That's nuts. That's one of the
Yeah.
coolest. That's some of the coolest cinematography I've ever seen in anything. And again,
Well,
it's
it's like
60
a
plus years
slit in
old.
the wall too that it follows through, where you can only see like part of what's happening, and you got like part of the wall on the top and the bottom. No, that shot's fantastic. That's the samurai that is like a farmer that kind of adopted the persona of a samurai.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's after like the kind of gun goes off, and it like shocked me.
Yeah, if I had any criticism of this at all, it would be because I mean, there's not much to complain about. I mean, this is a bona fide masterpiece, of course, and I'm not just saying that because it's important film canon stuff. Like I watched it and was entertained by it and moved by it,
Yeah,
and
the
if I
first thing I
had
saw walking out was this is exactly what everyone says it is and more.
Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like if you put this in front of me and I was able to watch it blind like I generally try to watch with this stuff, obviously I know the reputation of this movie, so I'm not totally blind going in. I'm going in looking at this thinking this is supposed to be important. This is supposed to matter. And you can't completely put those preconceptions, pardon me, out of your head. So you know, I do that as best I can where I'm like I'm going to take it me in the movie. If I end up not liking this, I'll say okay, I see how it's important. I see that George Lucas kept doing this. You know, like I get that, but I was bored. I was not bored. I feel like if I knew nothing at all going in, I would have had very much the same experience. I actually would have been more shocked by it. I probably would be gushing harder because I'd be like, "Look, I found this amazing movie. Oh, everything does this. Okay."
I found this really classic film. It's called Citizen Kane. You guys should check it out. Well, and for me, I got to see it as blind as I probably ever could have. Like, obviously, I know the reputation, and I know that you have seven samurais that kind of help out a village. But outside of that, I didn't know anything going into this movie.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
like
I
that
didn't
was
know what the archetypes were going to be like exactly. Oh, that's what I meant to say is if I was going to lob any criticism at this at all, it might be that some of the samurai don't get enough screen time for me to fully remember what their roles were when I get to the end. And if I saw this another time, it would probably all fit together and I would retract that. But just on one viewing, I'm not fully remembering what the major like character traits of some of these guys are because it does kind of have that TOS, you know, Star Trek Original Series triad thing, the Kirk, Spock, McCoy thing. The you have in like I'm not going to go into character names because I'll butcher them, but you have the Wise Sage leader guy, who is my favorite character easily, and then you
oh,
have
absolutely.
the like adolescent, like late teenager, early 20 something, like wet behind the ears, inexperienced guy, who is trying to do the right thing, but he also just wants to get laid, right? And then you have the kind of drunk clown guy who ends up having the most like tragedy and pathos of anybody in the movie. He ends up being fascinating, but I would argue he actually has the most screen time in the movie, and the movie is more about him than it is anybody. I think,
Mhm.
but like I think the three of them. Because when you have this many characters, the natural thing to do as a screenwriter is to make it more about a couple of them than the rest of them. And that's
Of
what this movie
course.
does, where everybody gets a little. Because, see, like, I don't mean to compare these too much, but Justice League does the thing where it goes, we're going to make it a 4 hour movie and we're going to try to give everybody equal time.
You
And
can't do that.
it's not real effective unless it was a miniseries. But this goes well, let's have these like main three that are each going to have kind of a story unto themselves, and they'll represent like three major stages of life. So you have the teenage kid who's just now finding himself. He's got a little bit of a coming of age thing going on, and it's a tragic one. He's going to lose that girl at the end. And by the way, downer ending. Like nobody wins in this, except for as our wise sage at the end says, except for the peasants. And some of them die anyway, and some of that is the drunken clown guy's fault because he's got to go get the musket too. But anyway, but you have the adolescent guy who's just now kind of finding himself, and then you have the middle-aged guy who is having a midlife crisis, I would say, and then you have the older to kind of past his prime guy who's our leader, and then everybody else falls in the middle someplace and is kind of in the spectrum of those three stages of life, I would say. And so like some of them are kind of more functional for story and battle strategy than anything, but everybody gets a good character moment, certainly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was the big thing I had watching. It was like, oh, okay, like even if I've like missed characters' names or whatever, like
Yeah.
I can still tell like, oh, that's that person, that's that person, and like I wasn't struggling to follow any of that. And like even some of the samurais that don't get as much screen time, I was like, oh, like this character's pretty cool. For what he is doing, like what moments he gets.
Yeah, the other one besides those three that stands out the most to me is the one who kind of selflessly goes and steals the musket,
Yeah, the two
and
big
who's
ones
the
for me, it's that
hero
one.
of our teenage guy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The two big ones that kind of stuck out to me, besides those big three you mentioned, were him and the one that's like the old war friend of like the older one. Because I really liked his end line where they're looking over the one samurai who's died, and he just kind of goes like, "Yeah, like once again, we're two of like the people that made it out of this." Because when they start, they're like, we've been through all these wars. Somehow we make it out.
Yeah.
This could be the last one though. Like who knows? And then you kind of get like to the end, and it's like, yeah, they're probably the two oldest, and like they made it out again. But like some of these younger people ended up dying.
Yeah, and they're real weary, and they're kind of losing some of their zeal for life every time they survive and somebody else doesn't. Like it's really sad looking at those guys at the end, because like as positive and um experienced and well-meaning as our leader guy is, he keeps kind of taking these beatings through his life too.
Hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's real sad. But yeah, he for whatever reason that character really resonated with me.
Really makes you do that.
Right. I also think it's interesting that our TOS triad are not exactly the three who survive. Two of them are, but then we lose the midlife crisis guy.
Yeah, yeah, his death is it's not exactly that shot, I think it's the shot after, but it's in that moment where you like pan through the building.
Yeah.
Uh
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
yeah.
And maybe and I'm saying this in hindsight with decades and decades of movies that have come past this, and most of my viewing has been after this year even, of course. But I need to go back and watch more classic movies, and especially stuff from this time period, because I'm finding that my favorite movies apparently are in the 50s. Because I've not watched enough movies from this decade, but like Facing the Crowd, I'm calling my favorite movie now, and this is certainly a wonderful, amazing film.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, I don't know what I was saying.
This is the second film that I've watched for ReQuest that I've been like, yeah, that probably cracks my top 100.
Yeah, this I guess I've had maybe three of those. And this is one of the earliest movies that I've done for a Patreon request. Certainly the earliest for us on this iteration of this as a series.
You've done this longer than I have.
I think the earliest one I did, and I alluded to this earlier, was the original Scarface, which is a 1930s film, I want to say.
Yeah.
And I've never watched the remake, as popular as that is, and in the zeitgeist, because I thought the original was so perfect. I kind of don't want to ruin it. There's a part of me that doesn't ever want to see that movie, but
No, I've heard that from some people where they're like, I don't really like the remake. The original's perfect.
a lot of people I don't think even realized there was an original. Like that seems like an
No,
ignorance
it is one of
bliss
those
sort of
movies.
situation.
That is one of those remakes where people just kind of go, oh, like that's the original.
Is Seven Samurai the most influential foreign film of all time? I know it makes a lot of lists of like best foreign film of all time, but can you think of, just with your limited knowledge, can you think of any? I don't mean to belittle you when I say that, but we both have limited knowledge
No,
of
I don't
foreign
know
films.
anything about anyone.
Can you think of any other foreign film that has been as influential on film culture at large as this one?
Yeah, I don't know. If it's not like the number one, it's definitely up there.
Yeah. Godzilla, maybe.
That was one of the ones that I was thinking about, but even then, like Godzilla's pretty niche, like for what it is. Even then,
It
because
is.
Godzilla wouldn't say like,
Well, and couldn't you say that big monster movies like that are like parodied and homaged maybe more than they're straight up like influencing story and tropes and things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think, oh, somebody says Metropolis. I actually didn't realize that
fair
was
enough.
a foreign film.
Yep. Well, it's
That's
German.
my ignorance.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's Fritz Lang. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like that's
not as influential as this, but like Nosferatu is really big.
Sure. Metropolis, and I mean, it's hard to say. I want to say like maybe the most influential on like later 20th century stuff, but even then I'm not sure. I mean, Metropolis is still making waves, obviously.
Metropolis is getting a TV show.
That's weird. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I forget what streaming service is doing.
Because we gotta find a way to bring back everything.
Show.
Who else wants that to be silent? And we all know it won't be, but that would be amazing.
No, it won't be. It'll just be the big robot, because that's what we all know. I've never seen Metropolis, but I know the robot.
And I mean, I'll eat my hat if that turns out to be good, but can we all just have a collective sigh right now? And
That
really?
was my reaction when I saw it. Like, we're rebooting Metropolis?
I think it's really interesting because I was listing movies that I would say fall in the category of establishing a story formula that we keep using forever, but also that stand up great, stand the test of time to today. And Star Wars is obviously also one of those, but you don't get Star Wars without this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly, because Star Wars is such just like a creator going, okay, I like that, I like that, I like this. Okay, now like put it together. So you get the kind of like cowboy stuff, and then the more samurai stuff from Kurosawa.
Well, and going back to movie serials, the whole point of that obviously was to be a big homage in the first place. Like, let's modernize this, but do it again. Like, you kind of have. I don't mean to just talk about Star Wars too much either, but you kind of have Lucas in some ways to blame for maybe the like kind of nostalgia wave that we're still in, where we want to just kind of keep remaking our favorite things over and over again. Like, that's what he was doing with Star Wars. But that as a what's the word I'm looking for? Again, just a story formula. Like, we can't stop going back to that. But it's not like all of these things don't have their own like initial influences too, because nothing is made in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I was looking up this Metropolis thing too while we were talking. That's being done by the Mr. Robot creator. So
Oh,
I've heard that show's good. So
interesting.
maybe,
People love that, so there could be
yeah,
something there. I don't. I've never seen that.
yeah. No, I haven't either, but I'm excited.
That's not the word I'm gonna use, but I'm intrigued, I guess. But yeah.
I'm more excited for the remake of Nosferatu than that. But anyways,
But yeah, I guess kind of story uh, stereotype is the word I was looking for earlier. Um, we had a super chat earlier from Senior Sticks. Let me read that
yes, it
real
was
quick.
about an anime.
Yeah, he said there's an anime based on this movie with the same plot. Well, and interestingly, there's a Metropolis anime too that is not exactly the same story as the original Metropolis, but is inspired enough by it that it's not just taken the title. So I wonder if that anime has the same thing with this. But yeah, like lots and lots of stuff. And apparently, reviewers of the day were already saying that Seven Samurai was like a Japanese Western, and then Westerns couldn't get away from this.
Oh yeah, I mean they basically remade this movie, from my understanding,
Yep.
with Magnificent Seven.
Yeah, and it is sort of just a straight up remake.
And then that got a straight up remake.
Yeah, and I've not seen that. People said it was surprisingly okay. I thought it
Oh,
looked
interesting.
dreadful from the trailers, so
I assumed it was probably dreadful.
so I didn't bother with it. But people said nice things. I don't know if it is good, but maybe I'll watch it now. I don't know.
Interesting, interesting.
But yeah, like obviously lots of things that can't exist without this, and kind of Frank Miller's entire career, and like you don't get. You don't get Ninja Turtles because Ninja Turtles is parroting Frank Miller, but also I don't think you get the whole ninja craze without this movie. And I realize that samurais and ninjas are different things, but
So
I don't
racist.
but I don't think all okay, but I don't think that whole phenomenon happens if you don't if you don't have this movie.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah,
And of course
definitely.
you wouldn't have Star Wars.
Oh yeah. Well, that and Hidden Fortress, as everybody complained. But Star Wars has redone this several times at this point, so. Oh, another big
Well, I
thing that I
think one
had.
of the reasons Star Wars keeps going back to this, sorry, is because
No, go ahead.
Lucas kept talking about this movie. And so even if people didn't see its influence in the original Star Wars, if they were listening to like people making other Star Wars things like Clone Wars, etc., probably listening to Lucas going, "Let's go to Lucas's favorite things and make that stuff." Like we do lots of Western things in extra media in Star Wars, like constantly.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly.
And
Like
obviously, you can
get
see
the
lots of samurai stuff in just bounty hunters as an idea, really.
mhm. When you get, I think it's the fourth episode of Mandalorian where he's, like brought into that village and like they have like the kind of bandits attacking it, and then he's, gotta hang around and help them out.
Oh, is that the episode with the girl that kind of falls for him that wants him to stay, but then he's gonna leave, but he's gonna try to leave Grogu there?
Yes, I think so.
I
Yeah,
like
and they
that
got
one.
like the walker that's like coming in. That's like the big. Instead of horses, they got the walker.
Yeah, no, I like that one. That was
Yeah,
alright.
no, that's one of the really good ones. Yeah. One of the things that I was thinking about too, this captured one of my favorite parts of Lord of the Rings in this movie. Uh, and this is going to sound very strange, I know, but one of my favorite things in Lord of the Rings is that so all of the swords in that movie, like they look like they cut through people, except for Gandalf's, who like just it's like Ian McKellen just whacking people with his sword, and like it's clearly just bouncing off people. And this movie is full of that, and I adore it.
That's a good point, but I don't know, it felt realistic too.
No, it's not a complaint. I love that. I love that
I
kind of
really
stuff. You have
appreciate
people just like whack people with swords. I think that's really amusing.
I really appreciate that it's not using a lot of like exaggerated sound effects.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they could have gone like really over the top with that. And there is also moments where like people look like they're getting actually stabbed too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's rough and it's real rough in places.
And like not even a tiny bit of gore either. Like when people get stabbed or slashed, they just kind of fall over, but it doesn't feel like
That's true.
um
I never found
doesn't feel
myself
censored in that way.
wondering
Like
where the blood was.
mhm.
That's interesting. Like somehow I just got finished with this experience and felt like it was a bloody experience, but it's not. And I think it's just because like I'm engaged and invested, and like I feel bad when people lose their lives in this movie.
No, it's got that kind of feeling that a lot of like older horror films have, where it's like something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where there's not a ton of gore and like you don't really see like anybody get like really stabbed or anything, but the way it's
Well, we
shot,
talked about this with
it makes you
Psycho.
feel
It's
like it.
just
Yeah,
like
Psycho's
that.
another good
It's
example.
just
Yeah,
like that.
exactly. No, it's
Uh,
just the way that it's shot and edited makes you feel, maybe not so much edited with this movie, 'cause a lot of it's like backed off
no, I would
shots,
give
but
some
like,
editing too, because
oh yeah, I'm thinking mainly like the battles where you have like
partly,
people
yeah, but
fight.
partly because the editing is controlling pacing so much, and it will throw you off where you're not expecting certain things that you'll see or not see or whatever. Um, like he's got Kurosawa has such a command of everything, like obviously storytelling, obviously pacing, um, but also with uh, like visually like what you're allowed to see and what you're not. One of the best shots in the movie is when there is an old man who is like absolutely shocked and flabbergasted at something, and you don't know what in the world he's so surprised by, and like he looks mortified, and he looks like he's gonna fall over dead because of whatever it is he's looking at, and it's a painfully long time before we flip around and see what it is that he's looking at. And when you said horror films, I was reminded of this scene. And the I think it's the drunk midlife crisis guy who's like screaming at this guy for not like getting his head together, and he doesn't like it when people have emotional reactions to things, even though all he does is react emotionally. But his idea is, men are supposed to be strong, and we can't have feelings about anything. And then when you get that moment where he picks up the baby, you understand where all that comes from. It's spectacular. But in that scene, the guy has just skewered one of the bandits, and he's still at the end of his spear, and the camera moves, and you see that he's killed this guy for probably the first time in his life, and he doesn't know what to do with it after that. There's almost the same kind of scene in I want to say season 6 episode of Deep Space Nine, where Quark kills a Jem'Hadar soldier, like first time he's ever killed anybody, and he's standing there holding the phaser, and he cannot move. He's like petrified, and it's the same kind of shot. And I don't know if that came directly from this, or if it's just kind of the same idea that like the two different creators came to. But that was a powerful moment that really kind of stuck with me.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No, there's so many moments that you can just like we could spend an hour just going like, oh, this was like such a powerful moment. This
Of
is such a
course,
powerful
yeah.
moment. I mean, it's
But
also
that was
a
an example of what we
3.5 hour
were
long
talking
film.
about. So
No, I know, but I agree. Like that's just such a great moment. It's fantastic. It's just it's there's just so many where you can just go like it's such like you said it's a masterpiece at the end of the day.
I am sure that when I watch this a second time, I'll pick up on a lot of character stuff that
Oh,
I missed first time around.
yeah, especially knowing all of it too. Because obviously with it being so long, you could maybe drop out some stuff in your memory, especially because since you didn't watch it all at once.
Well, we've talked about this a lot on the show, but first time around with a thing like this, especially when you come in blind, you don't know the significance of a lot of details and ideas and things until it all comes together. And so there's kind of when a movie is really cohesive, you've got kind of two equally important experiences if you watch things a second time. Like most things worth watching are worth watching twice for that reason, because it kind of being able to see the inner workings of the storytelling behind it once you've had that, let it wash over you watch, it can be just as satisfying, I think. At least if you're interested in how a sausage is made, narratively.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Another thing I wanted to mention, this is like a more technical thing, but I thought the part where they all fight in the rain was really cool. Like the whole time I was like trying to think about like how they would have set that up in order to shoot it that way.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and apparently
it's
this was just a really, really hard movie to make, and Kurosawa really lamented having to shoot in Japan with this kind of material because he said it just rained all the time and it was really difficult to get a lot of the shots they needed. He said it's and this is why Toho tried to get him to use a controlled environment, but like the movie would not be as good if he had done
no,
that. Like there's no way
no,
around. Like
absolutely.
with the exact same script, something would feel off. And I'm saying that in comparison to the experience I just had, I guess, but I really don't think that it would have been as effective. It wouldn't have felt as real and as, like I said, documentarian.
Yeah, and you can have like on backlots that kind of feeling of like being closed off, which you don't really want with this.
Yeah. No, that was the thing that most impressed me with this was that it just kept feeling like it was really happening, and
Hmm.
there wasn't a lot of acting. You know, like a lot of it really felt like it felt really natural in the moment. In fact, I would say, and I don't know if this is a criticism or not, but the only places where I was kind of half taken out in thinking, oh, this guy is giving a performance as opposed to I'm watching people that are naturally reacting right now, is the drunken midlife crisis guy. In places where he would just kind of like jump around and scream and laugh like an idiot, uh,
Yeah.
because apparently uh, he was given a lot of leeway by Kurosawa and asked to do a lot of improvisation, and so that was the only stuff in the whole movie that wasn't scripted.
Oh, interesting.
And you can kind of tell, and like I get why he did that. It's a good instinct, but I do think there's maybe a little too much of that. I mean, maybe that's just a taste thing, but I don't know. There were places where I found myself going, okay, somebody pointed at him and said, "Go act like a monkey right now," and that's what he's doing. It seemed like he was kind of supposed to be the comic relief character that the movie would then turn around and shock you by making him the most tragic and pathetic character.
Yeah, no, that's definitely his role. I can see what you mean. I do like all of those moments where he like flips out and he has like all of his like comedic moments, but I can definitely understand thinking that goes maybe a little bit too far. Especially there's a lot of those moments. And like you said, he really does just kind of run around screaming.
Tyler is in the comments now. Did y'all mention the main old man samurai is also one of the main characters in Gojira? No, I didn't even think of that, but now that you say that, I guess that is that guy.
Yeah, it's been a while
I
since I've
haven't seen the
watched it, so I
54
hadn't thought about
in long
that.
enough time, but now that immediately I'm getting the picture in my head. Yeah, it's the same guy. And that's
Also,
crazy because, like you said, it's the same studio putting these both out the same year. And I think this actually makes slightly more money than Godzilla does, but they're two of the highest grossing movies in Japan that year.
yeah, and that wouldn't shock me if this made more, but I have to imagine this probably had a way bigger budget,
It,
especially
it
filming
was
on
at the time
location.
the most expensive movie made in Japan.
Oh, okay, wow, yeah.
It's like $500,000 in 1954 money.
And I mean, money's on the screen, like
You can see
you
it.
know, exactly. We
But
we
it's
have
also
several
so
movies.
raw and also and minimal at the same time
Yeah,
because they had to build all that stuff and they have 6 billion extras because it's an epic on the level of like a Ben Hur or something, and that's why it costs so much. But it doesn't feel like an expensive movie, if that makes any sense. Because again, it feels like uh, this rugged thing where you just take some cameras. You know, like it feels like I'll go this far. It feels like they got in a time machine and took 3 cameras with them and shot something that really happened. That's what it, for the most part, kind of feels like.
exactly. You had your wide camera, you had your like close-up camera, and then they strapped one to a gorilla, and then they went back in time.
No, they just gave it to the midlife crisis guy between scenes, and he just
Oh,
kept doing the jumping around, like a crazy wild man thing.
that's why there's like all those shots where the camera's like,
Yeah, again, ahead of
oh,
its time. He invented shaky cam. Like, you didn't even know it, but there it is. And then we didn't use it in most movies for the next 30 years, but
yeah. Then like eventually you had like the Bourne movies. They're like, hey, everybody's already stolen everything from Seven Samurai. Let's do that one thing where the camera goes like that.
um I also, real quick, would be remiss if I didn't mention the kind of significance of the point in history that we are with Japan, because this is only like 9 years after the American occupation after World War II, and that deeply impacts the story and themes of Godzilla, of course. I don't think this is any exception with that. This obviously isn't about the about Cold War or the not Cold War, but like Reconstruction and all of that after World War II. It's not about the atom bomb or anything like Godzilla is. It's not that sort of cautionary tale, but it is about what happens with a war-torn country in this kind of Wild West period. And Japan is, again, really westernizing and is occupied or getting past an occupation at this point. And so they're still like feeling war torn. They're not in the same place that you'd be like after a civil war or something, but they're still reeling from uh, not one but a couple wars within a few decades that really ravaged their country, and this seems like a real like obvious time to make a movie like this, I guess, is the point I'm making.
Yeah, I mentioned this movie earlier in terms of the violence thing, but it's in that sense, it's kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where that movie has nothing to do with Vietnam, but Vietnam is very much a part of the makeup of that
But it actually
movie.
kind of has everything to do with that, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, and I think another way this is kind of about what's happening in the country right then is Japan is looking, like I said, it's westernizing. So it's looking really closely at its traditions and questioning things that hadn't been questioned in centuries. And the very same thing is happening in this movie, where you've got a samurai toward the end that's questioning, like, why is it bad that these two kids are falling in love and having a physical relationship when one or both of them might die tonight with this battle that's happening? Like, they're in love. Why don't you just let them be? And I really like how sober it is about all of that, where it in the same breath the movie can question tradition and how set in its ways Japan was about its morality and its honor system and all of that forever. And also, those things still went out at the end of the day because it has historical perspective. Like, you'd be rewriting history to end that movie with those two young people get together at the end and continue their physical relationship, and everybody's fine with it. That feels like more the kind of thing we do now, where it's like history got it wrong. That's not what it should be like. Let's have like a catharsis out of it and give a it's a happy ending where we like this movie can't have a happy ending, and if it did, the whole thing falls apart.
Mhm. No, if it was made now, like the old wise samurai would marry them at the end.
Oh my god, no. I also feel like that's what would happen if we made this in the 90s, but yeah,
Oh, absolutely.
that's really funny. Well, we've been at this for an hour. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about with this movie that you want to make sure we bring up?
Uh, I just had this thought right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Because this is 1954, do you wish you could go back in time and make it so that there was a sequel to this that was Godzilla versus the Seven Samurais?
No, because
That was very much a no with a but.
That's the real obvious gimmicky thing to say. Somebody earlier in the comments, and I meant to read this, half an hour ago when it was dropped, suggested that all of these characters are so interesting and colorful, and I think the beginnings of or solidifying certain archetypes, but not just like easy one note archetypes in and of themselves. Like these feel like as well drawn characters as you're gonna have in a movie like this. But somebody suggested that any one of those colorful characters could have had a sequel, could have had their own story. I mean, at least the ones that survive, because there's the mounds at the
exist.
end where there's some they're dead, and I mean Snyder could resurrect them, but they're dead. And by the way, that image of the four of them with the swords at the end is another one of those that's like gonna be burned in my head now.
Oh, absolutely. Now that you say that,
feels like the end of Logan.
The idea of like, okay, you get this group together and each one of them could be the protagonist of their own story was like the big premise thing for the third Predator movie, and I don't think it works at all. I want Seven Samurai versus Predator now. And that movie,
well, if we did this now,
because one of them is a samurai and he like fights the Predator with a katana, and it's awesome.
I mean, what are we talking about? That would be amazing, but it would just be the Seven Samurai shared universe, right? It'd be like everybody has to have their own movie now, and we rush them out. It's oversaturated, and we're just trying to get content on a streaming service, like.
Well, more so, I just want like a Scooby-Doo meets show for Seven Samurai, where it's like Seven Samurai
awesome.
Godzilla, Seven Samurai meets Predator, Seven Samurai meets Metropolis.
This is such a great self-contained piece. Like remaking it in other ways is, I guess, fine with me. I'm glad that nobody's attempted to come back and be like, let's continue on the Seven Samurai universe. Like, let's not do that.
Well, it probably helps that it's not a Hollywood film, right?
Yeah, exactly. But doing stories like that, like this with more supernatural things is obviously a good idea. And I think we've done a lot already, but.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, Japanese cinema, they have a lot more standards. They're willing to be like, put it to bed.
Let me ask you this question real quick before we leave. Where did you watch this? Because I know you guys don't have HBO Max in Canada, and that's where I watched it.
Oh, I rented it off iTunes.
Okay. Did you? I'm wondering if we had the same subtitles or similar subtitles. You watched the subtitle, I'm assuming.
Yep.
I don't know if there is a dub for this. I wouldn't want to watch a thing like this that way, but I found the particular subtitle job that I was watching to be maybe a tad too contemporary, and I'm wondering if you had that, where like some of the translation seemed like real 2000s. There's a place where language I don't usually use on the channel, but there's a place where
there's a lot more swearing than I expected.
The father at the end, when he finds out that the daughter just slept with the younger samurai, calls her a slut. I wasn't sure that was quite the right translation. There's a place where it's like where somebody says that's a load of crap. I wondered about that line.
I mean, now that you're saying it, yeah, but I wasn't thinking about it in the moment.
I just wonder what a closer translation would look like.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was taking me out a little bit here and there. Not that these
are
like words that didn't exist in 1954. Like, I'm not saying that. I don't mean to make it sound like, I expect it to be like 1700s language or something. But. And I mean, I realize that this like takes place in the 1500s, so maybe part of the reason it was weird was because those lines felt too contemporary for a period piece that took place that far back too.
No, you heard it here first, folks. Cap would have preferred it if instead of calling his daughter a slut, if he had said, "Thou hath showeth to your ankle." But yeah, no, I can see where you're coming from. I wasn't thinking about it in the moment, but now that you're saying it, it's like, yeah, there probably is like some of that, and that's kind of the double-edged sword, unfortunately, for us watching foreign films.
Yeah, we talked about this a couple weeks ago with an anime we reviewed, where I was kind of lamenting that sometimes watching things subtitled, you just don't know. It's frustrating to not know Japanese and not be able to just listen to it that way, because your experience could be, having as authentic an experience as you possibly can be hampered by a weird English translation where it's like maybe that's not exactly even the meaning that the line was originally intending. And I've had this with a lot of movies where you're listening to a dub. Maybe I've made this point before. You're listening to a dub, you're reading the subtitles, and they're not the same because the people that did the dub job translated it differently than the people that did the subtitle job, and the meanings aren't even quite exactly the same. You're like, well, you changed that one word, and now it's got my analytical, captainy little brain. It's got me going in totally other directions. I could have a whole read on a scene that's different,
and it could be a
because of the
mistake,
translation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, Godzilla's infamous for some of its dubbing.
Yeah.
You know, you can either watch Godzilla Raids Again subbed, or you can watch Gigantus the Fire Monster dubbed. It's crazy.
Well, anyway, everybody, thanks a lot for watching and listening. Thanks to Tyler for requesting this. I'm really glad that he finally made us watch this. Next time, we're going to watch...
It's very good overall, I'd say.
Austin, next time, we have a request from Tom.
Uh-oh, okay. Lay it on me.
Tom wants us to watch a Nicolas Cage film called Family Man.
I've never heard of that, but I love Nicolas Cage, so
Yeah.
hopefully
I don't know what that is. We'll see what it's like.
Okay, speaking of Nicolas Cage, it's nothing to do with that.
Sure.
Did you see the image of him as Dracula in the new Renfield movie that they're making?
Is he playing Dracula?
He's playing Dracula in a Universal Renfield spin-off.
Boy, they just really want that shared universe, don't they?
Yep, exactly.
Spin-off of what?
Well, it's not a spin-off of anything.
It's not a spin-off!
Well, and it's weird because...
They didn't make the Dracula movie first!
But it's even weirder than that because they're making a Dracula movie and they're making a Renfield movie. But the Renfield movie looks like it's traditional Dracula, while the Dracula movie is it's from the director of Eternals, and it's like a futuristic Western movie.
Dude, I'm in for that. That sounds awesome.
But
It's
I'm
weird,
excited for the
but
Renfield
do they have
one
anything to do with each other?
No.
Oh, so maybe they're not really trying the shared universe thing. Maybe they're. It sounds like they're learning their lessons from Warner Brothers, where they're like, now look, we can make Flash with Michael Keaton Batman at the same time as, or shortly around the same after we're making the Matt Reeves Batman movie. So it sounds like that whole thing again.
Yeah, so if we get some cool stuff out of it, I'm happy. But I am down for Nick Cage as Dracula.
That's wild. I guess we'll see what that's like. I mean, I'll look at, trailers. Maybe I'll watch that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's him and Beast from the prequel X-Men movies. He's Renfield.
Oh, interesting. I haven't seen him in anything else besides those. I don't know that I've ever watched him in a movie apart from those.
Oh yeah, he played Tolkien in that Tolkien biopic.
Oh,
he was in
terrible,
that Jack and the Beanstalk movie that Bryan Singer made.
I didn't even know about that. Okay.
Oh, I saw that in theaters. Yeah.
You okay? Was it bad?
It's not great.
Well, anyway, so next time, some Nicolas Cage movie I've never heard of, so look forward to that. If you would like to make a request for The Request, a movie or a pilot for a TV show or a comic book, you can go to patreon.com/geekvolution. The $15 tier gets you access to that. You can do it for just 1 month, let it roll over, and we'll make sure that your request gets in the list. But you can also stay on the tier if you'd like to, and you'll be in the rotation. Right now, it's about a 3 or 4 month wait. We've got a good 12 to 16 at any given time on the list. And in the
Lots of good
meantime,
variety.
yeah, lots of variety. Austin just made a ranked list of the movies that we've done together so far, and it might be fun, Austin, on one of these to maybe at the end kind of tack that on and just go down our rankings. I don't think we should do a whole video on it because I think that would be 10 minutes maybe. Well, not with us. We can't do anything for just 10 minutes, but.
Yeah, and Letterboxd if people want to check that out. I'm also ranking the video game movie Mania, but I got lots of lists on Letterboxd.
Yeah, and we've only done 2 of those so far, or 3. Have we done 3 of those so far?
We've done 2. So I just got 2. Hey,
we're bringing that back soon.
I have a Morbius movie ranking on Letterboxd.
What?
I thought it was funny.
No, that is funny.
I have one comment on it that's just debatable.
Also on Patreon, at the $10 tier or above, you can become a Patreon producer, and I don't thank our producers often enough, so I'm going to read the names down right now. Our Patreon producers at the moment are Zach, Wendell Jones, Michael Micheletti, Michael Gulick, Kareem Roberts, Jacob Schneider, Hot Soup, remember Hot Soup, Damon Begay, Thomas Edgehill, you, The Day Ghost, Super Billy, Bag Studios, Jajira, Ian McKee, Goofster, Elliot Slater, Dylan Musciello, Chewbacca's Lover, and Blake. Thank you guys. Thanks also to everybody watching, and we will see you again next week for some Nicolas Cage goodness, hopefully.
Blake, get a last name.
Later, everybody. Bye.
Bye.